In this section, we're going to use a tool that's called PHP MyAdmin, and it's used to deal with a MySQL database. So we can create tables, we can create databases, pretty much do anything to do with a database. So if you went along in the last chapter, section 2, and created the environment for PHP, which included XAMPP, then you should already have this installed. So if you want to click on your XAMPP icon, which is the control panel, you just want to make sure that MySQL is running. So if it's running, it'll say stop. Alright, so now if we go to our browser and type in localhost/phpMyAdmin, you should get this login screen. And in that section of the last chapter, I showed you how to change or add a password to your database. So you want to plug that in now. And if you didn't do that, then just leave the password field blank and it should let you in. Alright, so this is the interface. These on the left-hand side, we have all the databases that are on the system. These are just sample or stock databases that come with PHP MyAdmin. We want to actually click on the database tab and we want to create a new database. And I'm going to call this database company. This is going to be just a database for a fictional company. And you can see it was now added on the left. So if we click on that, it takes us to that database and we have no tables. Okay, so we can have tables like employees, products, and then in those tables we can have fields. Let's say like product ID is a field, and then we can insert data into those fields. So let's create some tables. The first table I want to create is employees, and it's asking us for the number of columns we want or for the number of fields, and I'm just going to say 5, and we can add or subtract as we go. So the first thing we want to do is when you create a table, most of the time you want it to have an ID, and that's going to be the first field, and the type of this field is going to be integer, so we're going to leave it at int. And the length, this isn't mandatory for an integer, but I usually put 11. If you think of a number that has 11 values, that's a pretty big number. Chances are you won't go over that. And then we need to scroll over here because for the ID we need to do two things. We need to set its index to primary because this is going to be the basic field that we identify our employees with. And we also want to check AI, which stands for auto increment. And what that means is that if we insert a record into our database and we don't need to provide the ID will automatically be promoted to the next ID, to the next number available. So if we have three values or three database fields, values, and we put in a fourth but we don't specify the ID of 4, it'll automatically go to 4. Alright, so that's very important. The next thing that I want to have in our employees table is a first name. And I like to format my names all lowercase with underscores for spaces. So first name, and this is going to be a varchar. And a varchar is a common type. It's pretty much anything that you want, any characters, numbers, letters, symbols, it can be anything. And we're going to put a length of 255. That's the common, that's the norm when you're dealing with varchars. So I don't think we're going to have a first name that's more than 255 letters long. And that's all we have to do. We don't need to make it AI or primary or anything like that. We only do that with the primary key, which is usually ID. So let's put a last name. Same thing. We want varchar, and that can be 255. The next thing I want is a department, and same thing, varchar. And finally we want an email address, and that's going to be the same. Alright, so now our employees table will have an ID, first, last name, department, and email. So we want to just click save, and now you can see we have our employees table. If we click on it, we can click on structure, and we can see all the fields that we have available. Alright, so next thing I want to do is create another table, and I want to call this products, and we'll say 5 again. Okay, actually we don't need all 5, but that's fine. So we want an ID for our products, and we'll say 11 for the values, the length, and we also want primary and AI. And then next we want the name of the product, which can be a varchar, and then we want the category. And the category is actually going to be, we're going to have a foreign key because we're going to have a categories table. So this is going to stay at int, and we'll say 11. Whoop, we don't want that, we want to press save. Okay, so we want to create one more table called categories. Let me see, and we just want 2 columns for our categories. All we need is an ID and a name. So ID's int, we'll say 11. It's going to be AI, primary, okay, and the name will be varchar 255. Alright, so this is our database. It has no data in it, it's just a structure right now. So there's a few different ways we can actually populate this database without PHP, without anything, just using PHP MyAdmin. So the first would be, let's click on employees. We could actually click on insert, and we can use these nice forms to insert data. So let's just give it a first name, Kevin Jones, department, we'll say design, email, we'll say kj@gmail.com. Now typically when you're doing this, you don't want to include an ID because, like I said, it's auto increment. It's gonna give us the right value automatically without us trying to mess with it. So if we click go, it says 1 row inserted. If we go to browse, we're browsing our employees table. You can see we have Kevin Jones, he's in design, and we have his email address. So that's an easy way to insert data using PHP MyAdmin. Now obviously this isn't optimal. You're not going to want to log into PHP MyAdmin to add employees to your program. Eventually you're going to want a PHP script where you can log in and add them. But to do that, we need to create queries, and we can actually run queries inside of PHP MyAdmin. If we click on company, so we're at the main database, and then click on SQL, we can run any queries we want into here. So the first thing I want to show you is an insert query. So this will insert data. So if you remember from the PowerPoint, we want to do insert into, and then we want the table name, which is employees, and then we need some parentheses, and this will hold the names of the fields. So first name, last name, department, and email. Alright, so then we need the values keyword, and then some more parentheses, and we can actually put in whatever we want. Let's say, and we want to do this with quotes, okay? Quotes around each string. So Fred will be the first name, comma, quote, say Thompson, comma, quote. We'll put him in design as well. And then his email, we'll just say fred@yahoo.com. Quote. Alright, so this should run, hopefully. We just click go. Alright, so it says 1 row inserted. So if we go to our company database, our employees table, if we click browse, you can see we now have Fred Thompson in our table. So okay, so that's a simple insert query. Now we just inserted one value. We inserted one employee. We can do multiple as well. So let's say, actually let me just paste that in. Now what we need to do here is we can keep this top line. Okay, so we're inserting into employees and then all the fields and then values, and then we want to copy this, the parentheses and everything in it, and just paste them like this. And now, actually, let me make this a little bigger. And now all we have to change is the values. So we'll say Bob Smith. He can be in, let's say, programming. We'll just change his email. Okay, let's say Sarah White, and she can be in marketing. Alright, so we'll do Tim Silver. He can be in programming as well. Okay, and one more. We'll say Leah Thompson. Well, she's yeah, Leah Thompson. She can be in marketing as well. All right, so now we have 4 new rows that we want to insert. So I'm going to click go. Let me make this smaller again. Okay, click go. Alright, so we have an error, and it seems to be near Sarah White. So let's look down here. Sarah White. Make sure everything is syntactically. Oh, I'm sorry. We need commas after each person. Alright, so we want a comma there, there, and there. So that should work. Go. Alright, so it says it inserted the tables, or the rows, I'm sorry. So if we go to browse, you can see now we have a bunch of employees. Now, what if we want to change something? If we want to change something, we need to use the update query. Alright, so let's look at someone here. Let's look at Bob Smith. His ID is 3. No one else has the ID of 3. So that's what we want to use to change something. Let's say that he moved to marketing from programming, so we need to change that. He also wants a new email address, and his new email address will be bobsmith@yahoo. So let's go over to the SQL form, and what we want to do is an update query. We want to say update employees. Actually, we want to click on company and then SQL. Update employees. We want to set department to where we say we're going to move him to marketing. Okay, and then a comma. So department is marketing. And we want to change his email to bobsmith@yahoo.com. And then, most importantly, we need to have the where clause. We're going to say where ID is equal to 3. Alright, copy that. Let's try that out. So it says 1 row affected. If we go to our employees table and look at Bob, he's now in marketing and his email address is now bobsmith@yahoo. So that's how you would update a row. Now we've done insert and update. What about when we want to just display the data on our website or wherever? Then we need to use the select query. So let's go to SQL and let's just do something easy. We'll say select all from employees, and what it will do is actually give us a table down here with the criteria that we're looking for. So we selected all, so that means it returned the entire table. We can say select first name, comma, last name from employees. Click go, and you can see it gives us only the first name and last name. Okay, let's do a couple more. Let's actually insert some products. So let's say insert into products. Then we want the name. Let's see, we want the name and the category. And the category is going to be an ID number of a category in the categories table, which we haven't added any data to yet. So I'm just going to say for values, I want, let's say, I don't know, iPod, and the category will be 1. Okay, so go. Oh, iPod needs to have quotes around it. So if we go to company products, you can see we have iPod with category of 1. Now I'm going to go to the categories table, and I'm going to just insert real quick instead of doing a query. The category ID is going to be 1 because it's auto increment, and I'm going to call it electronics. So category 2 will say furniture. Okay, so I'll click go. Now we have a categories table which has 2 categories, electronics and furniture. So that's why I made the product of the iPod category 1, because it's an electronic. Now you're not going to have to do this. Once we create a PHP script, it'll automatically do this. It'll automatically associate the products category field with the category table. Alright? And we can do that with something called join, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. But first I just want to show you how we can have more interesting select queries. So let's do this. Let's say select, we'll select all from employees where department equals marketing. Let's try that out. So this gives us all the employees that are in marketing. Okay, so we can also use things like and or. So we can say select, let's do select all from employees where. Now when I uppercase this where and the select and from, that's not needed, but it's just good to get in the habit of that because that's the typical syntax. We're going to say where department equals design or department equals programming. Okay, so we can use or here. We can use the double ampersand for and as well. Alright, so now we have everybody from the design and programming department. Alright, so now I want to show you a delete query. So if we go to our employees, let's say that Tim is getting fired, so we need to get rid of him. So we can see that his ID is 5. So let's go to company SQL and we'll say delete from employees where ID is equal to 5. So delete queries are actually really simple. Alright, so if we go back to our employees, we can see that Tim is no longer with us and ID 5 is gone. So it's not like Lee is going to become 5 because Tim's gone. It's just that ID is just gone. So it's gonna, the next ID will be 7 and so on. So let's go back to products. And I'm just going to insert another product. Let's say, I don't know, home audio system. And that's going to be in category 1. And let's say Sony PS3 is also in 1. So we have 3 products. Let's insert one furniture. So insert, let's say end table, that's going to be in 2, and let's say leather couch, which will be also a furniture product. Okay, so now what if I want to select all products that are in the category of electronics? To do that, we need to use what's called a join. And let's go to our SQL window or form, and we want to say select that we want the product name and the category name. And the problem with that is that in our products table we don't have the category name, we just have the ID, which points to the name on the categories table. So we want products.name. We want the name from the products table, and we also want categories.name. Alright, now since categories and product both have the field name, it'll get confused. So what we need to do is we're going to select categories.name as category. Alright, because like I said, products and category table both have name. So instead we're going to select categories.name as category. So we're going to select this from products, and I like to do this, just the spacing out, it just looks neater. And what we're going to do is a left join of the table categories, and we want to use the on keyword because this is where we're going to match up the products and categories. It's going to be products dot category, and that's going to match the categories table ID. Okay, so let me open this in a new window. So categories, we have, products, we have a name and a category number. Alright, so we can't get the category name from this table. We need to join in this table so we can get the category name. So that would be electronics, furniture. Alright, and what we're doing with the on statement, we're saying on products category equals categories ID. We're matching up products. In products, the category has the category heading. On the categories table it has the ID heading. So this ID matches up with the category. Alright, so let's run this and see what happens. So now we have this table that has the product name with the category name. Okay, so what it's doing is joining two tables together to give us the result that we're asking for. And I know that's probably a little hard to understand. I know it was for me when I was learning this stuff, but once you get used to it, it's pretty easy to do. and to just wrap your head around. So that's it for this section. Next we'll be actually doing this stuff through PHP as opposed to just using the PHP MyAdmin tool.